Inner Child Healing Workbook. Recover from childhood trauma and anxious attachment. Set healthy boundaries and end the overthinking and anxiety in your relationships. By Seraphine Vale. Introduction. The room is small and smells like cold floor wax and sharp soap. It is 1952 in London. The walls are a pale, sickly green. There are no pictures on them. There are no toys on the floor. In the center of the room stands a heavy iron crib. The bars are high, like a small jail. Inside that crib is a 2-year-old girl named Laura. She is wearing a stiff white gown. Her face is red, and her eyes are puffy from crying. A man named James Robertson stands in the corner. He is holding a heavy movie camera. He is not a doctor, and he is not a nurse. He is a social worker who believes something very strange for this time. He believes that children have feelings that matter. In 1952, most doctors think that if a child is fed and kept clean, they are fine. They believe that parents are a distraction in a hospital. Because of this, parents are only allowed to visit for 1 hour a week. James turns on his camera. The film begins to spin with a soft clicking sound. He is there to film a documentary called A 2-Year-Old Goes to Hospital. He wants the world to see what happens when a child is left alone. At first, Laura screams. This is what James calls the protest. She calls for her mother. She bangs her small fists against the iron bars. She expects someone to come. She expects to be picked up and told that everything is okay. But the nurses are busy. They have been told not to spoil the children. They walk past her. As the days go by, the film shows a change. Laura stops screaming. This is the despair. She sits in the corner of the crib. She sucks her thumb and stares at the wall. Her eyes look empty. She is still a child, but she looks like she has given up on the world. Finally, the film shows the most chilling part: detachment. When Laura's mother finally comes to visit, Laura does not run to her. She does not cry with relief. Instead, she turns away. She looks at her mother as if she is a stranger. To the doctors of 1952, this looked like Laura was settling in. They thought she was being a good girl. But James Robertson knew the truth. He saw that something inside Laura had broken. She had learned that her needs did not matter. She had learned that the people she loved could vanish at any moment. To survive the pain, she had to stop feeling. This film shocked the world. It changed how hospitals worked. But more importantly, it gave us a window into a part of ourselves that we often try to hide. That little girl in the iron crib is still alive inside many of us. She is the part of you that panics when a text goes unanswered. She is the part of you that feels like you have to be perfect to be loved. She is your inner child, the ghost in the machine. You might be wondering why a story from 70 years ago matters to you today. You are an adult now. You have a job, you pay bills, you might even have children of your own. But have you ever noticed that sometimes you don't feel like an adult? Have you ever felt a wave of hot anger or cold fear that seems too big for the situation? Maybe a coworker gave you a small bit of feedback and you felt like you were being yelled at by a parent. Maybe your partner was quiet at dinner and you spent the next 3 hours wondering what you did wrong. Your brain started spinning. You thought of every mistake you've made in the last 5 years. You felt a tight knot in your stomach that wouldn't go away. That is the silent alarm. It is a survival system that was built in your childhood. When you were small, you needed your caregivers to survive. If they were cold or angry or went away, it felt like a life or death emergency. Your brain learned to scan for danger in the faces of the people around you. The problem is that the alarm never turned off. Even though you are safe now, your inner child is still standing in that iron crib, watching the door. When you feel anxious attachment, it is just that little child trying to make sure they aren't abandoned again. When you people please or overthink, it is your way of trying to control a world that felt scary when you were young. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are simply a person who is living with a set of rules that were written a long time ago. Those rules helped you survive back then, but they are hurting you now. They are keeping you from feeling steady. They are keeping you from having the deep, easy love you deserve. The Promise of the Path. This workbook is a map. It is designed to take you from the iron crib of your past to a place of emotional sovereignty. By the time you reach the end of these pages, you will be a securely attached self-parent. This doesn't mean you will never feel sad or anxious again. It means you will have the tools to handle those feelings. You will learn how to quiet the inner critic. You will turn that harsh, mean voice in your head into a voice of support. Set firm boundaries. You will learn how to say no without feeling like a bad person. Regulate your nervous system. You will learn how to turn off the silent alarm in your body when it starts to ring. Stop overthinking. You will gain the power to see facts instead of fears in your relationships. Find authentic joy. You will rediscover the parts of yourself that you hid away just to fit in. This journey is backed by decades of science. We will look at the work of people like John Bowlby, who studied those children in London, and Alice Miller, who showed us how sensitive children hide their true selves. We will use techniques that help your brain and your body work together. This isn't just about thinking differently. It is about healing from the inside out. Meeting Maya. To see how this works in real life, we are going to follow someone named Maya Thorne. Maya is 34 years old. She lives in a very clean, very quiet apartment in Seattle. From the outside, Maya looks like she has it all figured out. She is a senior UX designer at a big tech company. She is smart, creative, and everyone at work loves her. They love her because she never says no. If her boss, Marcus, asks for a project to be finished on a Sunday, Maya says, "Of course, I'm happy to help." But inside, Maya is exhausted. It is 11:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. The only light in her apartment comes from the blue glow of her phone screen. Maya is sitting on her sofa, refreshing her messages. She went on a third date with a man named Ethan 2 nights ago. The date was great. They laughed, they talked about books, but Ethan hasn't texted her today. Maya's mind is a storm. Maybe I shouldn't have talked about my cat so much. Maybe he saw that I have a messy desk and thinks I'm a disaster. Her chest feels tight. Her hands are a little shaky. She starts to draft a text. "Hey, just saw this cool article and thought of you." She deletes it. Then she types, "Are we still on for Friday?" She deletes that too. She feels a deep sense of shame. Why do I care so much? She asks herself. I am a grown woman. Why does a text message feel like a life or death situation? Maya doesn't know it yet, but she is stuck in a loop. When she was 7, her mother was a perfectionist. If Maya got a 95 on a test, her mother would ask where the other 5 points went. If Maya was sad, her mother would tell her to stop being dramatic. Maya learned that to stay safe, she had to be perfect, and she had to be quiet. She became the abandoned architect. She tried to build a perfect life to cover up a foundation that felt like it was crumbling. Maya is about to start the same journey you are starting. She is tired of the silent alarm. She is tired of feeling like she is responsible for everyone else's happiness while her own is missing. Over the next 20 chapters, we will watch Maya learn to stand up for herself, heal her heart, and finally put her phone down and sleep. The roadmap ahead. We are going to move through this process in 3 main stages. First, we will look at the wounds. We will find out where your silent alarm came from. We will talk about the invisible cage of your childhood and how it still affects your choices today. We will meet the thinkers like Alice Miller, who help us see that our pain is real and that it wasn't our fault. Second, we will build the tools. This is the how-to part of the book. We will learn about reparenting. This means learning to give yourself the love, safety, and sameness that you didn't get when you were little. We will learn how to set boundaries that act like a fence for your soul. We will even learn how to shake off stress, just like animals do in the wild. Finally, we will step into sovereignty. We will learn how to handle conflict without fear. We will rewrite the story of your life so that you are the hero, not the victim. We will even learn how to play again. This workbook is not a book you just read. It is a book you do. There will be exercises. There will be moments where you have to be very honest with yourself. It might feel heavy at times, but remember the film of Laura. The most painful part wasn't when she was screaming. The most painful part was when she stopped. Healing begins the moment you decide to listen to that inner child again. It begins when you say, I see you, I hear you, and I am going to make sure you are safe now. The door to the room is open. Chapter 1. Healing the Wounded Self. Maya Thorne stood in the middle of a glass-walled conference room in downtown Seattle. Her boss, Marcus, was leaning against the table, asking her to redo an entire user interface design by Monday morning. It was Friday at 4:30 p.m. In this moment, something strange happened. Maya didn't feel her heart hammer against her ribs. She didn't feel the familiar cold sweat on her palms. She didn't feel the desperate need to say, "Of course, I'll get it done," to keep him happy. Instead, she felt a quiet, solid weight in her center. She looked at Marcus and said, "I can't do that this weekend. I have plans, and the current timeline didn't account for a full redesign. We can look at this on Monday morning and prioritize the most important changes." Marcus blinked. He wasn't angry. He just nodded and said, "Fair enough. Enjoy your weekend, Maya." As she walked to her car, the Seattle rain felt refreshing rather than gloomy. She had done it. She had protected herself. But to understand how she reached this moment of peace, we have to go back to a time when Maya felt like a house built on top of a sinkhole. We have to go back to the moment she realized her perfect life was actually a cage built by a child who was just trying to survive. For years, Maya believed a very common lie. This lie is the reason many people never start the work of healing. The lie is simple. My childhood was fine, so my current anxiety must be my own fault. We tend to think that unless we had a big T trauma, something like a natural disaster or extreme physical violence, we don't have a right to feel wounded. We look at our parents, who worked hard and kept us fed, and we feel a crushing sense of guilt for being unhappy. We tell ourselves to get over it, because others had it worse. This is the myth of the good enough childhood. It suggests that if your physical needs were met, your emotional needs didn't matter. But the truth is that the human brain doesn't just need food and a roof. It needs to be seen. It needs to be heard. It needs to know that it is safe to be imperfect. When those things are missing, a wound forms. It isn't a bloody gash. It is more like a slow, silent leak in a ship's hull. You don't notice it until the water is up to your knees, and you're wondering why you're struggling to stay afloat. In 1979, a woman in Zurich, Switzerland, decided she was done with this lie. Her name was Alice Miller. She was a highly respected member of the psychoanalytic world. She spent her days in rooms with heavy curtains and leather couches, listening to the problems of successful adults. These people were doctors, lawyers, and artists. On the outside, they were the gifted ones. On the inside, they were crumbling. Miller noticed a pattern. Her colleagues often talked about the sanctity of the parent. They followed the old rule.
If a patient complained about their mother being cold or their father being demanding, the therapist would often try to help the patient understand the parent's side.
They would say things like, "Your mother did the best she could," or "Your father was under a lot of stress." Alice Miller realized this was a trap. By protecting the parents, the therapists were abandoning the child all over again. She saw that her patients were living behind a mask. She called this the false self. These were children who had learned very early that their parents only loved them when they were good, quiet, or successful. To keep that love, the child pushed their real feelings, their anger, their sadness, their playfulness, deep into a basement in their mind. Miller's break from the establishment was a scandal. She walked away from the prestigious societies and wrote a book that changed everything. The Drama of the Gifted Child. She argued that the gifted child is actually the one most at risk. Because they are smart and sensitive, they learn exactly how to mold themselves into what their parents need. They become the perfect child to soothe a depressed mother, or the achieving child to satisfy a narcissistic father. They win the prizes, they get the A's, and they never cause trouble. But the price they pay is their own soul. The truth about our childhood is stored in our bodies. We can try to forget it, but the body never does. Miller's work showed that when a child has to hide their true self to survive, they grow up into an adult who feels like a fraud. They spend their lives waiting for someone to find out they aren't actually perfect. They become abandoned architects, building beautiful lives on foundations that were never inspected for cracks. Maya Thorne was the definition of a gifted child. She remembered a specific afternoon when she was 10 years old. She had spent all week studying for a math test. When the teacher handed the papers back, there was a big 95% in red ink at the top. Maya was thrilled. She ran all the way home, clutching the paper like a trophy. When she showed it to her mother didn't smile. She didn't hug her. She put the paper down on the kitchen counter, looked at Maya, and asked, "What happened to the other 5%? In that one sentence, the architecture of Maya's life was set. The message was clear. You are only valuable when you are perfect. Your effort doesn't matter. Only the result does. Maya didn't get angry. She didn't cry. Instead, she went to her room and studied harder. She became the girl who never made a mistake. She became the woman who worked 80 hours a week at a tech startup, trying to find the other 5% in every project she touched. This is how the wounded self operates. It is a survival strategy that outlived its usefulness. When Maya was 10, being perfect kept her mother's approval, which felt like safety. But at 34, that same strategy was killing her. When her boss, Marcus, asked for a revision on a project, Maya didn't just see a work request. Her nervous system saw a threat to her survival. Her gut would tighten. Her breath would grow shallow. And that 10-year-old girl inside her would scream, "If I'm not perfect, he will leave me. I will be forgotten. I will be nothing." This isn't just overthinking. It is a biological response. We can see this in the history of psychology, specifically in the famous and quite cruel Little Albert experiment from 1920. A researcher named John Watson wanted to see if fear could be taught. He took a baby, known as Albert, and showed him a white rat. Initially, Albert liked the rat. But then every time Albert reached out to touch the animal, Watson would bang a loud steel bar behind the baby's head. After only a few times, Albert didn't need the loud noise to be afraid. Just the sight of the white rat made him cry and crawl away. He had been conditioned. His brain had linked the white rat to a threat. Most of us are like little Albert. We aren't afraid of white rats, but we are conditioned to fear things like displeasing others, making a mistake, or being alone. Our loud noise was a parent's cold shoulder, a sharp criticism, or a long silence. Now as adults, we see a white rat, like a partner's slow text response or a boss's frown, and our brain bangs the steel bar. We react with panic, even when there is no real danger. The problem is that many of us live in a state of childhood amnesia. This was another one of Alice Miller's key concepts. We don't remember the pain because we were taught to call it something else. We call it discipline. We call it high standards. We call it just how things were. We suppress the memory of the hurt to protect the image of the people we relied on for survival. But as Miller pointed out, the truth will set you free, but first, it will make you miserable. Healing the wounded self begins with the difficult task of looking at the past without the rose-colored glasses. It means acknowledging that big T trauma isn't the only thing that leaves a scar. In 1998, a massive study was released that proved Miller was right all along. It was called the ACE study, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. Researchers from the CDC and Kaiser Permanente looked at over 17,000 people. They didn't just ask about big T events. They asked about things like divorce, having a parent with a mental illness, or feeling like no one in the family loved or supported you. The results were a shock to the medical world. They found that these childhood experiences were directly linked to adult problems, including heart disease, depression, and even how people behaved in relationships. The higher a person's ACE score, the more likely they were to struggle with their health and emotions as an adult. It proved that the wounded child isn't a metaphor. The wound is a physical reality written into our nervous systems. For Maya, the 95% story was her little Albert moment. It created a false self that was hypervigilant. She was always scanning the room, always reading people's faces, always trying to stay ahead of any possible criticism. She was a UX designer because she was an expert at predicting what people wanted before they even knew they wanted it. She was gifted at being what others needed, but she was a stranger to herself. When we talk about inner child healing, we are talking about the process of finding the true self that was buried under all that conditioning. It is the part of you that existed before you learned you had to be good, to be loved. It is the part of you that knows how to play, how to rest, and how to say no. To find it, you have to stop being the architect of your false self and start being the investigator of your own history. You have to look at the invisible cage you've been living in. Alice Miller described this cage as the set of rules we follow to keep people happy. Rule 1. Never be a burden. Rule 2. Always have the answer. Rule 3. Don't show ugly emotions like anger or jealousy. Rule 4. If someone is unhappy, it is your job to fix it. These rules helped you survive a home where emotions were unpredictable or where love was a reward for performance. But in the adult world, these rules are the bars of a prison. They lead to attachment hunger, where you are so desperate for connection that you will sacrifice your own needs to get it. You become an anxious attacher, constantly checking your phone, overanalyzing every word a partner says, and feeling like you are one mistake away from being abandoned. Maya's office was her most comfortable prison. One afternoon, weeks before her breakthrough with Marcus, she sat at her desk, staring at a design for a new app. Her colleague Sarah walked by and said, "Hey, I think the font on the home screen might be a little hard to read. Maybe try a bolder one." It was a small, helpful suggestion. But inside Maya, the silent alarm went off. Her false self took over. She felt a wave of shame. Sarah thinks I'm bad at my job. Sarah is going to tell Marcus. I'm going to be fired. Instead of saying, "Thanks, I'll try that," Maya spent the next 4 hours obsessively changing every font in the entire app. She skipped dinner. She stayed until 9 p.m. She was trying to silence the alarm of perfection. This is the spectrum of trauma. On one end, you have the big T events. On the other, you have the little t traumas, the thousands of small moments where you were told your feelings didn't matter or that you weren't enough as you were. Both ends of the spectrum create the same result: a nervous system that is stuck in survival mode. Alice Miller's life work was about giving people permission to grieve for the children they were. She believed that until we mourned the unlived life, the life where we were allowed to be messy and loud and imperfect, we can never truly be healthy. We will keep looking for perfect partners to fix our imperfect selves. We will keep working until we burn out, hoping the next promotion will finally make us feel safe. Healing isn't about blaming your parents. It is about taking an honest inventory of the foundation you were given. If you were built on a sinkhole, you don't blame the ground. You start the work of reinforcing the foundation. You become the lead architect of your own life. This journey starts with a simple yet terrifying question. Who am I when I'm not trying to please anyone? For Maya, the answer started to emerge in small ways. She began to notice the false self in action. She would be halfway through an apology for something that wasn't her fault, and she would stop. She would feel the urge to check her phone for the 10th time to see if a date had texted back, and she would put the phone in another room. She was beginning to see the cracks in the mirror. The wound itself is not a life sentence. It is a set of patterns. Patterns can be unlearned. The brain is plastic, meaning it can change and grow at any age. Just as little Albert was conditioned to fear, you can be conditioned to feel secure. But you cannot change what you do not acknowledge. You have to be willing to look at the other 5% and realize that you were always whole, even without it. Maya Thorne's journey didn't end in that conference room with Marcus. It was just the beginning. She still felt the silent alarm sometimes. She still heard her mother's voice in the back of her mind when she made a typo in an email. But she was learning to treat that voice like background noise rather than the absolute truth. She was starting to realize that the gifted child didn't need to be gifted anymore. She just needed to be real.
The goal isn't to reach a state where you never feel anxious or where you never overthink. The goal is to become an adult who can handle those feelings without letting them run the show.
It is about building a secure base within yourself, so that when the world gets shaky, your foundation stays solid. Maya went home that Friday after saying no to Marcus. She didn't spend the weekend worrying about Monday. She went to a bookstore. She bought a book on gardening, something she had always been curious about, but never had time for, because it wasn't productive. She spent Saturday morning with her hands in the dirt, planting seeds that wouldn't bloom for months. She wasn't being perfect. She was getting her fingernails dirty. She was making mistakes. And for the first time in 34 years, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The story of your healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to the person you were always meant to be before the world told you who you had to be. It is a slow process, and it often feels like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But every time you notice a trigger, every time you set a boundary, and every time you choose self-compassion over self-criticism, you are laying a new brick in a foundation that will actually hold you. Maya's journey continues, and so does yours. The invisible cage is open. You just have to be brave enough to walk through the door. The awareness exercise. Over the next few days, pay attention to the silent alarm in your body. When do you feel that tightness in your chest or that urge to fix a situation? Write down what triggered it. Was it a text? A tone of voice? A deadline? Just observe it without judging it. The who told you filter. When you hear a self-critical thought, like "I'm not doing enough," or "they're going to leave me," ask yourself, whose voice is this? Does it sound like a parent, a teacher, an old boss? Identifying the source helps you realize the thought isn't a fact, It's an old recording. The true self check-in. Once a day, ask yourself, what do I actually want to do right now? This isn't about big life changes. It's about small things. Do you want tea or coffee? Do you want to walk or sit? Start practicing the habit of listening to your own desires, no matter how small they seem. Chapter 2. Why does the past keep calling? In 1944, most doctors and judges in London believed that bad children were simply born that way. If a teenage boy was caught stealing a bicycle or a loaf of bread, the experts blamed his genes. They thought some people were just bad seeds who lacked a moral compass. The common wisdom of the time said that if a child acted out, you should punish them more or send them away to a strict school. No one thought to look at the child's home life or their past. They believed the present was a clean slate, and if a person kept making mistakes, it was because they were weak or mean. John Bowlby refused to accept this. He was a British psychiatrist working at a clinic for children, and he noticed something the others had missed. He didn't see bad kids, he saw hurt ones. He decided to look deeper into the lives of 44 young thieves who had been sent to his clinic. He spent hours talking to them and their families, looking for a pattern that went beyond bad blood. He found something that shocked the medical world. Out of those 44 thieves, 17 had been separated from their mothers for a long time during their first 5 years of life. In the group of children who didn't steal, only 2 had experienced that kind of separation. Bowlby realized that these children weren't born to be criminals. They were reacting to a hole in their hearts. They were trying to fill a void left by a missing connection. This discovery changed everything. It proved that the past doesn't just stay in the past. It lives inside us like a ghost, calling out and telling us how to act today. Bowlby showed that our earliest relationships create a map for every relationship that follows. If that map is torn or missing pieces, we spend the rest of our lives getting lost. The map inside your mind. Bowlby called this internal map the internal working model. Think of it as a set of instructions your brain writes when you are very small. Before you can even speak, your brain is watching how your parents or caregivers treat you. It is asking questions. Is the world safe? Will someone come when I cry? Can I trust the people I love? If your parents were there for you, your brain wrote, the world is safe, people are kind, I am worth taking care of. But if your parents were distant, mean, or just not around, your brain wrote a different set of instructions. I have to take care of myself. People will leave me. I am not enough. The problem is that once these instructions are written, your brain treats them like the law. You don't even know you are following them. This is why you might find yourself dating the same kind of person over and over, even if they treat you badly. Your brain is just following the map it was given. We often call this the familiarity trap. Human beings have a strange habit. We prefer a familiar pain over an unknown joy. If you grew up with a parent who was always busy and never noticed you, your brain learned that love feels like waiting. As an adult, you might find yourself attracted to people who are emotionally distant. When they ignore your texts or forget your birthday, it hurts, but it also feels right in a weird way. It matches your map. Maya's rainy coffee shop. In a small, quiet coffee shop in Seattle, Maya Thorne sat by the window. The rain blurred the streetlights outside, making the world look like a watercolor painting. She had a cup of tea in front of her, but she hadn't touched it. Her eyes were glued to her phone screen. She was looking at her ex-boyfriend's Instagram page. They had broken up 3 months ago, but she couldn't stop checking on him. He was a man who rarely shared his feelings. He would go days without calling her, and when they were together, he always seemed to have one foot out the door. He was the definition of avoidant. As she scrolled through a photo of him hiking with friends, Maya felt a sharp tug in her chest. It was that familiar silent alarm, a mix of anxiety and a deep, hollow hunger. She began typing a message in her head. I saw your post. Hope you're doing well. I miss our talks. She paused. She knew if she sent that, he would probably give a short, one-word answer or ignore it entirely. She knew it would make her feel small and desperate. So why did she want to do it so badly? Maya looked up from her phone and saw a mother and a young daughter at the next table. The mother was busy on a laptop, her face tight with stress. The little girl was trying to show her a drawing she had made. Look, Mommy, I drew a cat, the girl said. Not now, honey, I'm working, the mother replied without looking up. The girl's face fell. She sat back, pulled her drawing toward her, and began to scribble over the cat with a black crayon. She didn't cry. She just became very quiet and very still.